Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studios. As always, joined now by officially a reoccurring guest. He was on the show last year. He's back again to discuss a lot that's happened in the world of tennis in the last year, in the last week. John Lloyd, the former Australian Open finalist and now author and commentator as well. John, thanks for joining the show so much. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
No, my pleasure. Always fun to chat to you. It's always good to catch up.
Yeah, well, I want to start with this. I mean, last year when you came on, you were starting the promotional tour. It hadn't even been officially released stateside, but the Dear John, the John Lloyd autobiography, it came out. It had a lot of good reviews. What's the process been like of just reacting to the feedback and kind of learning about how you're perceived in the media and in the fans and the adoring public?
Well, it's been a fun ride, to be honest. It was. I really enjoyed it, and the thing I've enjoyed most actually is it's enabled me to sort of reach an audience where I can do sort of speaking engagements in connection with the book. And so I've been doing quite a few of those appearances. Actually, quite a few in LA, in Florida, and various places. Newport, the Hall of Fame, Rhode Island. Where I do a speaking engagement, 50 to 100 people, whatever, and they have the books and we get rid of a few books, and then I just chat for like an hour and take questions and then just recollect stories. And it's something I love doing, and the book has really sort of given me an extra incentive to do it, but it's also sort of put me back out in the public, in the eyes of the public to a certain extent. So it's been great.
I wanted to ask you about one of the quotes that I came across. I thought it was just so, fascinating, but also, a good introspective look to tennis players and people in the world of fame and get to that point maybe earlier than most. The quote where you said, "It's best not to waste time trying to get a handle on fame. You won't work it out. Instead, just go with the flow, keep your head down when the going gets tough." That resonated with a lot of people, I would assume, because especially in a sport like tennis where we've seen some veterans break through later, but a lot of times these are kids essentially that become famous overnight, and there's no blueprint, there's no roadmap with how to handle it.
No, it's very true. For me, it was sort of, I was lucky in that I sort of gradually came through and then became pretty well known in Britain, which, as you know, during the Wimbledon period gets a bit crazy, but by and large, the audience there, it's obviously not on the same scale as the United States in terms of the size and everything else. So I sort of grew up, became well known there. And then when I married Chris, my, kind of the fame sort of tripled, but I was sort of used to it to a certain extent. So in some ways it was sort of, reasonably easy for me to sort of handle. But I see some of the people now, some of the players, the young players, they get very nervous. We've seen it in press conferences, and they don't like people asking this and asking that. And it's one of those things where you got to, if you're a professional tennis player, it's a business. You've got to get used to that. You've got to market yourself, but the tournaments want to market you as well. So
right.
if you can't get used to that, then you're in the wrong business, and it's better to take up another sport or another hobby.
And you can't pick what country you're from. I know you mentioned like you're being from England. I mean, I look at someone like Emma Raducanu. I couldn't even imagine what it's like to go through becoming as famous as she did, an unprecedented run, winning the US Open as a qualifier, but then being British and having all these opportunities just thrown at you when there is no, you dream of these things, but the chance that it happens and the fact that it happens so fast is just a path that most people never even get to.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, especially in Britain, I think the only thing I would say in Emma's favour in the fame situation was that Andy Murray was before her,
right?
Because we've been so desperate for a champion, a slam champion in singles for so many years that every year it was like, oh, is it going to happen this year? Oh, no, it's another year. When is it going to end? Since Fred Perry was the last male. We've had a few women since then, obviously Virginia Wade, Ann Jones, Angela Mortimer earlier on. But there's been it's been sort of an anxiety time for that sort of period when British players have been in the spotlight to have won a championship, a major. And when Andy came along, at least that sort of path was closed or should I say open. And then when Emma came along, the pressure wasn't quite as much on her as it would have been if Andy had not won a slam.
Right.
I thought Emma has handled it remarkably well. And she was also in some ways fortunate that it was actually at the US Open and not Wimbledon. If it had been the US Open, holy cows, I hate to think, well, I think she would have been a dame overnight, and I hate to think what else would have happened to her. But she's handled it very well. It's been a frustrating, period since then for her in many ways. But I still think she herself has carried it very well. And there's a lot of negative stuff out there as well as a lot of positive stuff. But I think she is such a mature young lady that I think she's handling it remarkably well. I know at the moment she's injured, but and so she's not playing these tournaments, but she will come back, and I believe in her totally.
Yeah, it's a long marathon of a career, not a sprint, and we wish that she comes back healthy, comes back to perform. Getting back to last week in the fortnight in France at Roland Garros, another remarkable history-making tournament for both the men and the women. And on the men's side, history was made yet again, and it was made by Novak Djokovic, 23 Grand Slams now, third Roland Garros title. He's got the major record. He's the first man to win all 4 slams 3 times. There's just not much more superlative-wise you can say about this guy, John. I just look at him as the total package of the game itself. That's just wonderful, remarkably beautiful. The physical fitness he keeps himself in, and just the mental strength, the ability to tiebreaker after tiebreaker, lock it down, play efficient, rise in the biggest moments. There's just not much more to be said. He is the most accomplished men's tennis player of all time, and he earned it every step of the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. For me, I look at the 3 greats that we've had in this last sort of era, and I would put Andy Murray and Stan Wawrinka kind of just obviously outside that group, but with great players in their own right. But when you think of it, to have Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal with what they brought to the table, for me, the prettiest player to watch, the most beautiful, the most artistic out of the whole lot is Roger Federer. For me, he's the maestro that every match you see him play, he would come up with, conjure these 4 or 5 shots that defy possibilities, and he does it no problem. Rafa and Novak are different types of players, but majestic in their own right. Novak, to me, is just the mental side of what he's come through in these last few years, with a few problems here and there, obviously, and to come through and to break the record like he has in the men's. The hunger he has, it just seems that he just wants more and more. And I personally think that I think he's loved by quite a few people. I don't think he's the most popular champion if you're going to compare him to Rafa and Roger. But let's be honest, it's not easy to be as popular as those two. And I think Novak knows that in some ways. I think he gets a bad rap, but I think he's someone that when he stops, and I hope it's going to be a while before that happens, he will go through a different ceiling in terms of his popularity. I think people will, when they look back at it, they'll realize how great he really is. And it's a remarkable journey he's had. And let's face it, he could win another 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. I mean, no one's ever going to catch that. No one.
Following Federer and Nadal that you brought up is a gift and a curse, because you'll never be, you're following two of the icons in the sport, their popularity. It's hard to match. It's virtually impossible to. That being the curse side, the gift being it pushed him to limits. Hard to follow that, but he was always chasing them. And you hear guys outside of the big 3, outside of the guys you mentioned, a guy who stands out to me is David Ferrer when he retired. And they said, well, your career, what would have been like in a different era? Maybe you'd want to slam. And he said, no, I love this era because they made me better players. So Djokovic to come through all that, to get through to that point. It also struck me, John, I mean, this is a guy who's been around so long. This trophy ceremony and this, him celebrating, now he's the family man. Now he's the veteran on tour. The new top 10 came out. Every player is 27 or under, except for the guy at number 1, 36-year-old Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, it is quite remarkable, isn't it? I just love the way that one of the things I do love about Novak, and I think we talked about this when we did our last podcast, I believe we did, but I write about it in the book, is that he has said from, I don't know how many years ago, but he was chasing the record. And it meant a lot to him. Whereas much as I love Rafa and I love Roger, they were both very, well, how can I say it? That they were saying whenever people brought it up that they weren't really concerned about breaking the record and blah, 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 blah. And I don't believe that for 1 second. I'm sorry to say that, but I don't. I think Novak is the one that's telling the truth. Every player wants records. This is what they live for. And when Novak, I mean, you could just see it, how he took hold of that French Open tournament. And as his coach, and they were talking about it after, just said when he comes to a slam, he just mentally just goes up 3 levels and he's just ready to play. Even if he comes into a slam, maybe not at the 100% that they would like him to be, mentally he just goes above, and they know right away that he's ready to go. And it's proved that over and over again. His record is ridiculous. It's absolute. Well, I can't remember how many quarterfinals in a row in slams that he's had. It was in the 20s. I can't remember what it was. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's even played the French these slams as many times as he's had, let alone win them all. It's unbelievable. 3 times each. I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah, it is a joke. It is a joke. I wanted to play the audio of this clip from his press conference because you mentioned the crowd, and this is after the semifinal. So I want to play this right now for the listeners out there.
You've been booed by the public several times, including when you won the second games of Carlos in the third set. How do you react to that?
I don't mind. It's not the first, probably not the last time, so I'll just keep winning.
That was just perfect. And that's, look, he backs it up. Say what you want about him. And I mean, look, nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to have missteps. He's not, immune to that, but he backs it up. He's very authentic out there, and appreciated that. And like you mentioned it too, John, he is not slowing down. I think there's the physical side, which is to marvel at a guy his age. It still looks as strong as he does on the court. But when you've succeeded that much, the mental side, the motivation of, look, what more is there to do? But he's still driven, and he still has that hunger for more.
Well, yeah, there's no question about it. And of course, he has a chance to win the calendar slam. And I think that's the next motivation he's got right now. And he's the favorite to do so, which will be mind-boggling. But just going back to that press conference, I love the fact when the crowd, when he played his match against Fokina was that the third quarterfinals or 16s, and he won the second set in a tremendous battle there. The first 2 sets were tiebreakers, and he celebrated after that second set. Okay, I mean, did it look great? I didn't have a problem with it, but the French crowd, they booed him, and he just sat at the changeover and gave a sort of a sarcastic hand clap to them. And he's like, you know what? I'm taking you on. And let's face it, the French crowd is the worst of the slams. I mean, they are horrendous. They are horrendous fans. Not all of them, but a large. Let's face it, they even turn on their own players if their own players aren't playing well. And what they did to Taylor Fritz was disgraceful as well. But I love Taylor Fritz's reaction too. There was people criticized him afterwards and said, "Why did you do that? You're only going to stir them up for the next round." And I was like, "So what? That's like he's playing in the Davis Cup away from home. Yeah. When you're in France and you play against a Frenchman, that's going to happen. And they can turn on you at any stage. So take them back on," which is exactly what Taylor did. And then Novak did it. And I love that. He's a warrior, and he loved that challenge.
More with John Lloyd here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Djokovic, simply remarkable. The final, I do want to give credit. Casper Ruud back to the French Open final. It was a rocky last 6-7 months or so. I've talked about it time and time again. He admitted he mismanaged his offseason, had some ups and downs, a lot of downs for him, and then he got back to where he is. And really, it goes without saying that his 3 Grand Slam finals, 3 trips to Grand Slam finals, pretty remarkable for a guy his age and from Norway to do what he's done, a player that's really had to earn it and has turned himself into one of the best quality clay court players in the world.
Oh, he is so tough. He's so tough. I hope he has a better grass court season this year, because last year he came to Queens and quite frankly was awful. It almost looked like he didn't want to be out there on the grass, didn't know how to play on the surface, and was terrible. But what a player he is. I mean, he is going to be a factor for the next few years. I think deep down he's probably hoping that Novak doesn't play much longer. I mean, I think all of these guys deep down, they won't say that, of course, but that's what deep down they're believing. As soon as he's off the top of the pile, then after that, I have to be honest, that top 10 is a bit open. I mean, you put Alcaraz at the top of the pile, but the Alcaraz situation, I don't know what you think about that. But for me, I suffered from cramp quite a bit when I played. But I didn't have the advantages that you do now, where you've got 9 people around you with doctors and physios and nutritionists and all that stuff. You know, we used to, as I said in my book, you know, I used to eat a steak, medium rare, with French fries about 2 hours before the match and wash it down with a couple of Cokes. So we had no idea what the hell was going on there.
I wanted to ask you that. Yeah, I wanted to ask you that because I've talked to tennis players recently. And oddly enough, the player that got my mind into this was Holger Rune, who's had the issues with cramps. But the tennis community, and you might be in this camp, they've kind of said to me, no, this is a nerve-related thing.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe it? Okay.
I don't believe it. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it. I used to have cramps. Now, obviously, he's in great shape. If he isn't, which he is, we've seen it, then his group are not handling that right. I don't believe that. Okay. I believe, and I'm not a doctor, and I probably am totally wrong, but to me, there's something lacking in his system. You would think that he's being checked out enough and they would know that. Maybe they are. But I don't believe that. He won the US Open. Well, he's won a slam. Why would he get extra nervous about playing Novak Djokovic in the semifinals? I mean, it's not like if it was his rookie event where he got to the semis, I get it. You can get more tight and everything else. But this guy, I know he's young, but he's already won a slam. He's already beaten Djokovic. I don't believe the nerve situation. For me, for him to get cramps after 2 hours, I was totally and utterly shocked. 4 hours I get, but 2 hours for someone like that. And I tell you something, they're going to have to fix this up. And what are you going to tell him? Don't get nervous. Well, don't get tight. How are you going to stop that?
The match in Miami, I mean, the match in Miami against Sinner, it was oddly similar in the sense where it's a great match. His level's amazing. There's the way he plays the game and the way he moves is the top of the top. But
incredible.
But yeah, this is going to have to be a thing if it's, you know, this isn't the first time this has happened, and it's going to, you know, the long matches, the heavy matches. Now, I don't want to get into the whole debate about how he should play and what managing that. It's just, you know, it's unfortunate because we all wanted this epic match, and full marks to Djokovic. He handled it. He's never going to break down anymore. Somebody who had this problem though back in 2010 and did get it fixed up.
Right, exactly. For me, listen. If it is nerves and I'm totally wrong, which I could well be, then okay. But how do you get rid of that? I mean, how do you? I mean, do you train him? Do you have people talk to him about how to kind of relax more in between points? I mean, the night before, the day of the match, I don't quite know. But to me, I guarantee you, the other players on the tour have now thought in their mind that they can, especially over best of 5, and if it's in a hot condition, we can take this guy on and stay with him.
Long rallies, long points, it's unfortunate with that. It really is because, you know, the Sinner match in Miami, Jim Courier was on the call, and, you know, I always speak glowingly with him, but he pointed out that it was a complete mishap in diet nutrition, because you could see Alcaraz yelling at his box, like, I need the water bottle. I need to hydrate immediately. Like something went wrong. And that's the part where, you know, I'm more inclined, again, we don't know, I don't have a direct line in there, but I'm more inclined to think that he needs to shore up the diet side, the nutrition, and making sure that he's taking full care of himself. And when you're that elite, when you're that good, and he is that good,
he's that good.
Maybe you don't have to pay attention to every single detail, because your natural ability and your natural drive can get by against most players. But then you get to the highest of highs, and now you got to, you know, have more attention to detail. Not an uncommon problem, I guess, just manifesting a little differently here.
Yeah, I listen, I hope you're right. And I hope it can be fixed up, because he is, well, he's already a big star, but he's going to be a superstar unless this thing affects him, which I don't think it will. They'll figure it out somehow, because he's a dynamo on the court. I mean, what he puts out is phenomenal. And if you take Djokovic out of the equation, I mean, I don't know how long Djokovic's going to be around, but I can see Alcaraz, as long as he fixes this up, you know, I can see him being obviously the next person to dominate. But if I was him, I'd get hold of him and say, listen, take what the players used to take in my day, pickle juice.
Yeah.
It'll either help you or you'll throw up all over the court, one or the other. But what the hell, give it a go.
They got the iodine tablets now too, so there's options there. I just want to see him finish these matches and you know, keep this going and manage this problem. But you know, full marks again to Novak Djokovic, Grand Slam number 23, Grand Slam number 4 on the women's side, John, to Iga Swiatek, her third Roland Garros, and you know, suddenly, I mean, she's become the queen of clay in her era, and 3 of these things at age 22 is nothing to just gloss over. She is just a complete player on that surface. And in this match in particular against Muchova, had to battle some jitters, some, you know, maybe nerves across the finish line, but got through it and found a way to win when it wasn't her best level. That thoroughly impressed me. Iga reigned supreme yet again in Paris.
Yes, she did. And she is just a battler. And of course, unfortunately, to a certain extent, the women's draw got sort of pushed down a bit because of what Novak was achieving. Mm-hmm. But for me, the women's, I mean, the semi-finals and the finals were exceptional. The Sabalenka match against Muchova was just, in my opinion, one of the best women's matches for years. And the finals wasn't that far behind. And Muchova, for me, what a player. What a player.
Such an eclectic game, isn't it? Like how she plays is just, it's also appealing to the eyes too. Like the way she plays is pretty.
Gorgeous player. I mean, talk about being able to, I mean, just the way she maneuvers the racket around, the feel she's got, the variety. I mean, just changing up the game. I love her game. I don't think it will, but I hope this is not sort of a one-off for her. I don't think it will be, because she is a huge addition to the women's game. And you put her in the mix with, and Sabalenka is also, I mean, what a player she is. And it's not going to be there. I can see multiple slam winners in the next few years, the way that women are coming through there. I'm not so sure there's going to be someone dominating. I know Swiatek at the moment is in the lead, but I'm not so sure she's going to hold on. I know that Clay's her best, but she won't win at Wimbledon on grass. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think there's openings there for some of the other women there to really make a big stand against her.
Well, Muchova looks, I mean, just on the outside, and again, this is someone that was unseeded, but you have to preface it with the injuries, the issues. Yes. Wasn't like a low level player. It looks like it would translate to grass, to my opinion. Like
I would think so.
You know, like,
if she doesn't have a letdown, you know, just because getting to the finals and all the things that are going to happen to her financially and all the fuss about her, if she doesn't have a letdown, I mean, for me, I would put her right now in my top 2 or 3 favorites. For me, the way she plays, I can't imagine why her game won't be spectacular on grass. I just can't imagine it.
It was a tough one for Sabalenka, though, to lose the way she did. You know, 5 games on the trot, match points, and, you know, going up and down. We know how high the ceiling is, but might have to raise the floor in some of these big matches. I do want also, you know, with Iga, getting pushed is going to make her a better player, like we were talking about the men and all these things. But, you know, the French Open open-air record held by Chrissy Everett is 7 French Opens. It's in her sights. Like, it's very possible with her age and her ability on this surface.
Right. And if you hear Chrissy say that she hopes that Iga will break that record, she's not telling the truth. She doesn't want her to break the record. I promise you. Yeah. She's a lovely lady, but no one wants their records broken. If they say they do, they're not telling the full truth.
I like the old American football player who I'm sure you know, and hopefully some of the listeners do. Eric Dickerson back in the day has the for 2,100 rushing yard, 2,100 plus rushing yards in a season. He was the only guy I remember that was like actively rooting against every running back that came close. He's like, no, I don't want it. And I thought that was saying, everyone thinks it, but at least this guy's saying like, no.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I love, apart from I played tennis with him and he's a great guy, but Jack Nicklaus, the golfer, when they asked him years ago, do you want Tiger Woods to break your record? He said, no. I mean, he'd be the first person to go up and congratulate him if he did, because he knows how hard he worked to get it. But you don't want your records broken. No. It's just simple. That's what you play for.
Yeah, I agree. And with Iga having a couple crop of players, Rybakina unfortunately wasn't able to finish the tournament, but we've got a class of players going into not just Wimbledon, but beyond.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's sink or swim, which is how it should be. You know, I think that's kind of what we've always wanted, right? We don't want the same players winning every slam, and I know female players of all eras have said this, that they want top players to have a tier. They don't want just the random unseeded player that comes through and then never is to be heard of again.
Right. Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's fun to have multiple slam winners, but you don't want to get to the stage where, you know, I mean, Iga's already won the 4, whatever, but you don't want players just, you know, just to win 1 or 2. I mean, everybody would take a lot of people would take 1 or 2. I sure as hell would, but for them to get familiar with the fans and to create crossover stars, you do want them to kind of have a group, if they're going to be a group where they're winning 5 and 6 and 7s, that kind of stuff, rather than 2s and then they tend to fade away. But I think with the current crop of women players that we've got now, I don't see any of those that I've mentioned. And we're still talking about Coco Gauff and all these others that are around, and Pegula. I mean, there's players that haven't won a single slams yet that certainly have the chance. I think the women's game is in a very healthy position right now.
Couldn't agree more with that last statement in particular. As we transition to grass court season, I can't think of anything in pro sports like this where we have a surface change that lasts so briefly.
Yeah.
It has so much prestige, leading to Wimbledon, the most prestigious tournament there is. But we're gearing up for grass court season, and should point out we're seeing some familiar faces that are back on the tennis court we haven't seen for a while. There's some not so great results in some cases, but you know, Berrettini, Venus Williams playing, Milos Raonic, who's still going, won his first match.
Right.
Do you want to start with Nick Kyrgios, though? He did not look great against Yibing Wu, who is no slouch himself, but Kyrgios has been open about giving himself and asking the fans to give him some patience to get back into match shape and try to stay healthy. It's unfortunate because he stole the show at the Wimbledon fortnight last year, but I don't know if there's enough time. I mean, that's the biggest concern, is there's not much time for him to play himself back into form, leading to the All England club.
I agree. I agree. I wasn't, you know, when I saw that result with Nick, I didn't see the game, but I've read about it. But yeah, you do wonder whether there's enough time. I would love to see him have another run again, because he's just, he brings something to the table that no one else really does on the tour. But I would doubt that he'll be match tough enough to make a run. I'd be very serious. I mean, if he gets to the quarterfinals, I think it would be a hell of a good job. But it's good that, at least it's good that he's back. Berrettini, you know, fabulous grass court player, but again, seems to be suffering. I tell you, the one who I think might cause a few problems for some of the top players is Andy Murray. I you know, it's an interesting thing with Andy, and I might be, again, totally wrong with this, but he is geared. If you listen to his press conferences and everything else, he's really geared his year to this month. I mean, he's already won a challenger in Surbiton last week, but he's really geared his year to Queens and Wimbledon. And I think that when he looks at that top 10, and if you take Novak out of the equation, I think he fancies himself against a lot of these players on grass. And I think he's been trying so damn hard to get high enough ranked so that he'll get a seed, which is looking iffy at the moment. If he's in a good section of the draw, I think he fancies his chances big time to cause some damage. And if he can get out of this habit he has in slams these days of winning in the first couple of matches, but having 5-hour matches, he could be dangerous. I tell you something, if he's not seeded, he's the most dangerous floater that's been seen at Wimbledon for many, many years, if not ever. And I think he could have a good run there. I really do.
Never have to doubt his, maybe not match toughness, but just toughness in general. He's just going to fight till the wheels fall off. Last year, he ran into obviously a much better form, but Isner, that was a tougher, again, the ranking wasn't as high as it should be. But yeah, I think getting off the court early is huge for a guy like that. But yeah, I mean, you look at the top 10 outside of Novak, won the last 4 Wimbledons, who's in form and also who's had success here. The lists aren't, that scary, I should say. And even for a guy like Alcaraz, this transition from clay to grass, it's so short. Maybe you can, I guess, shed some light on that, what the transition's like. You go from clay to grass and you have to change your game. You have to get used to a whole nother style of play. What's the, what are the most challenging parts of that whole process?
Well, it has changed. Grass to clay, or clay to grass is the toughest thing in our sport. It used to be, in the old days, a lot worse when Borg won it 3 times, because the grass in those days was totally different than it is now. The balls were bouncing down by your ankles and your knees. And so it was a much faster game with a lower, faster bounce. Now they've got this slower, they put this more durable grass in where the ball bounces harder. And it is more like a hard court in certain ways, except for the movement and the way the ball slides on the court. So it is a different feel. There's no doubt about it. I'm interested to see Alcaraz. I'm commentating at Queen's Club on Monday, and he's in the draw. I'm also interested to see how some of these players, how they have to move their court position on the return of serve. If you saw at the French Open, sometimes they were so far back, they were almost climbing into the spectators. I don't think you'll be seeing that on grass. It's too, the ball doesn't get up as high. And I think you're more vulnerable for short balls there if you give away that much court space, that much real estate. So they have to adjust and change court positions in certain ways. They have to bend a bit more. They have to. Their movement is different. It's a whole different game when they get half court balls. They're going to have to be a bit more positive on the approach shots on the grass. The serve comes into it more. I love watching the difference between and it is a big difference. I always. Again, it's the old days, but my first thought was you got to bend more, you got to stay down on the ball more, you got to really feel that ball on the strings. If you come out of it too soon on the grass, the ball doesn't do anything. And people, again, in the old days when it was serve volley, people said, well, it's easier because it wasn't as long as rallies as it is on the clay. But I think in some ways it was more difficult because your concentration had to be in some ways even more, because on grass, you lose your serve on grass. It is tough to break back on the grass. The ball zips through more on the surface. It spins out wider. You lose a break on serve at Wimbledon. I'm not saying your set's done, but you're in big trouble. Whereas clay, you feel like you can come back. You can get enough returns back in play. And the court surface helps that with the highness of the bounce. It doesn't go through the court as much. You lose on grass, so your focus when you're holding serve, you've got to keep your mind on it the whole time. You have one lapse and you lose a stupid game on your serve, set could be over.
Yeah, when you were saying return position, it made me think not really a ringing endorsement for Daniil Medvedev on the grass.
Exactly.
How he plays. It's still remarkable to think, and pointing out that grass court season is a week longer than it used to be.
Yeah.
Borg doing what he did is just absurd, that he would just go clay, not even play a warm-up, just get a couple hits in and then go win Wimbledon.
Well, that is beyond belief, because in those days, as I say, the surfaces were night and day, the difference. And he used to take off 4 or 5 days after the French, and then he would go to a club called Cumberland. And actually, I was lucky enough, I think I may have mentioned this last time, but I was lucky enough to practice with him a couple of times there. And he was so bad the first 3 or 4 days on the grass. He was terrible. And I kept thinking to myself, why the hell is there not an umpire right now and letting me beat this guy on grass? Because I know I can beat him. Yeah. And then after about 3 or 4 days, gradually you'd get the hang of the ground strokes and, keeping the ball in better in play and serving volley and mixing it up. And then all of a sudden he was the Borg we all loved, and he won it. Well, I think it was 3 times he won it. The French and Wimbledon back to back. I believe it was 3 times.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it was 3, which is without question the toughest thing to do in our sport. No question about it. And he did it 3 times. I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
Yeah. The last time you were on, you kind of caused an uproar. We got more people going to the LA parks trying to find Bjorn Borg on the public court. That story.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple more things with John Lloyd here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Yeah, as we kind of look at grass court season, I do want to give a shout out. I mentioned to her still playing Venus Williams at 42. Wasn't able to win her first round match in Hertogenbosch, but you look at her still on the court, the passion, the love of the game, and also she played someone born in the year 2005, and the trend of her career. So she's played someone born in 1960 was the oldest opponent, 2005. So we're going from when Kennedy was alive till YouTube and social media.
How amazing is that? When you look back at her career, and I remember Richard Williams saying that because he got a lot of criticism, or the girls did, for sort of taking time off and doing other things. And he said, they're not going to be playing that long. And their tennis is, they've got other things in their life. I mean, if he'd have known that both of his daughters would have played as late as they have, and the love of the game, I think that's one of the most proudest things that he'd probably have in his many great moments he's had with his 2 girls on the court. The love of the game just shows through, because let's face it, Venus or Serena, but particularly Venus, Serena, okay, you could say she was chasing records, and that may have kept her longer than she would have normally played. But Venus isn't she's not going after any records. She just loves to play. And I love to see it. She's like Jimmy Connors. I mean, was playing. Jimmy wasn't chasing any records. You know, Ken Rosewall getting the finals of those tournaments at 39 and 40. I mean, that love of that game. Venus, I believe, and probably Serena too. But Venus, I see her hitting balls till she's whatever 80, 90. I just see her. She's that sort of person that just loves hitting the ball. It's wonderful to see it.
Yeah, it really is. You know, it's somebody that, like, with her sister, they're supporting, that the family of tennis is still involved, and it's just a blast. Well, John Lloyd, you're about to head to over the pond. You're about to leave and go and really get back into the broadcast booth for the first time in a while. Excited to start calling some matches here?
Yeah, I'm always get a bit nervous the first week because it's Queens and it's you know, right into the action. And to be honest, you know, I'm watching tennis but I haven't commentated for almost a year. I just do this sort of month, you know, and you get in there and it's like, okay, you've got to get your timing back. It's like I'm playing tennis again. You know, you're going out there and kind of relearning, and you've got to just get right into it because the camera's right on you and you can't mess around these days. You say one thing that might be slightly off key and you're in trouble. But we have a good group at the BBC, and Queens is, you know, and I'm going to say this right now, and I know you know this, but if you can't get Wimbledon tickets, and let's face it, not that easy, go to Queens sometimes from the States. It's one of the best kept secrets, I think, on the men's tour. It is a fantastic tournament that you get a great draw there, the intimacy of the place, you're right by the players. You can go up there and have a little pins like all the, you know, around the lunchtime, just like all the Brits do. And you're right in the center of London, and at one of the oldest clubs in the country, if not the world. It is an absolute blast. And if anybody hasn't been to Queens to watch the tournament there, they're missing out because it is spectacular.
It's also one of the biggest trophies too every year.
Oh my God, that's exactly right. That
trophy that big.
I know. Yeah, you always wonder whether someone's going to drop it.
Yeah, it's a lot. You got to get the off-season training in, and too, like you still got the All England Club membership, so there's some behind closed doors there. That's pretty prestigious. You know, what is it like being a member at that club?
Well, it's pretty nice. I mean, to be honest, I don't live there, so I don't go there, you know, during the year very much, hardly at all actually. But it's pretty spectacular when friends of mine that, you know, they ask to come, and I'm like, well, get in line. I've got a big line here of people that want to come. But it's a majestic tournament. The club is amazing. I wish they would lighten up on a few of the rules here and there, which as a member you've got to, you know, all the all white, and you can't do this, and you can't have a stripe on your shirt and your shorts and your shoes. You've got to have all white shoes. You can't even have a coloured sole on your shoes. That's how strict they are there. So there's a few of these sort of rules I'd like to change, but it is a magnificent club. Yeah,
it's definitely one to keep your eye on for, you know, not just the prestigious nature of the tennis, but just the pomp and circumstance. There is really nothing like Wimbledon, and the lead up with Queen's Club is a beautiful thing. Well, John Lloyd, I have one last thing. You've been a great guest as always on this show. I just wanted to know, someone from experience, do you have any advice for Paula Badosa and Stefanos Tsitsipas? Any advice for how they're going to attack the world together, however long that might be? Well, I would say that, how can I put this? Not easy if you're in the same sport. You know, at least there are a few more tournaments now where you've got where you're together, but it can be a bit of a lonely life on the tour. When you're traveling apart, it's not the easiest to get on with it, because you both want your careers to be successful too. So, but hey, the great thing about it, which people don't think, you've got someone that you're having a relationship that understands exactly what you're going through. And to be honest, when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you know, whatever it is, it takes time to almost, because tennis players, we're selfish beasts, and we have different habits on and off court, and we have a different mental side. And there are things that you say to your loved one after they win, or after they lose, or when they're about to play the night before, that if you're not in the game, you can say just the wrong things, and it sounds very sort of stupid and selfish. Well, it is, but that's the way it is. So when you've got someone in your own sport that's around there, they know what you're feeling, so they know when to lay off, when to encourage you, when to sort of not talk too much, when to whatever, get out of your way, and so on and so on. So
I hope they have a great relationship. I mean, why not? They're good. They're good people. It'll be fun to watch, though.
Yeah, hope everyone's happy. That's the first thing. You know,
yes.
How long it lasts could be a lifetime, could not be, but you know, hope they're happy. And thanks again so much, John Lloyd, for taking time out of your day.
My pleasure.
Busy schedule coming. You're always welcome on this show. It's a blast to talk and learn some stuff from you. So thanks again for coming on Tennis Channel Inside In.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.